And a happy Friday to everybody out there as we kick off the official holiday weekend. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast, along with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna is here. Bree is producing as always, and you in the chat. Look forward to discussing a lot of things with you, beginning with some glue guys, maybe some cheaper pickups that we haven't discussed so much here on the show as we still path forward to the offseason, targeting some players for Daryl Morey. He can just call us. We have the answer. We got you covered, Daryl. So we're doing that. We'll get into a little bit of mailbag
Don't call
questions.
me Daryl. It's a holiday weekend. Leave me the hell alone.
Mailbag questions a little bit later and some other fun stuff on this freestyle kind of Friday here on the PHLY Sixers podcast. But as we get into a little bit of the glue guys, just some names that we haven't really talked about as much on the show while we featured the big name players, some others that could be potential targets that are out there, the Aaron Gordon type of names that we brought up. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into that bag of names that we haven't discussed as much to help out this basketball team, especially when it comes to maybe some salary cap implications that will fit perfectly with some of those bigger salary names that we've discussed, from Paul George to Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram, all across the board. And as we do so, we got to begin with Derek Bodner here. And Derek, as we look at some of these names, I see one right away. Spoke Baby saying there in the chat, just throwing out a name there. But some of the names that we haven't really discussed, and what are you looking for in the type? Is it a starter? Is it somebody who can start in a pinch, or maybe have some starter games if they have to go and go a little bit deeper into the bench? Yeah. Or are you looking more that 6th, 7th man? What kind of role player are we looking at here for you?
Well, they've got 3 guys under contract right now. Only 2 of them you would classify as starters. So You're probably looking for a starter if you can find one. Sure. Realistically, I think what we're talking about here, you've got your one big acquisition, which we talked about over and over and over again, where that could be PG or Jimmy at $49 or $50 million, or whether that could be someone like OG a little lower than that, yada, yada, yada. But you're then, I think what we're talking about in this show, or at least I hope that's what we're talking about, because that's what I planned for, would be sort of like the remainder of that cap space, or that room mid-level guys in the $8 million a year.
Or even the minimum guys we could go
minimum
down
guys
to.
Eventually. Somewhere in that $8 million slot, or maybe even that like upwards of $10 to $15 million a year slot. I think that's what we're looking for. Ideally, if you can find a starter, because you're clearing the decks to get as much cap space as you can, you kind of need them. So I think you would certainly be aiming for that. But yeah, I think it would be, I think you're looking for one thing I'd really, really love, just more size. Mm-hmm. More size, more athleticism, more ability to cover ground, more ability, if you do get in scrambles, to actually be able to help and recover.
Maybe a Matthias Lesort.
Ooh.
Deep cut. Ooh. Very, very deep cut.
Just inside baseball. We were talking about him before the show. Former Sixers draft pick under Brian Colangelo, who's currently playing in Greece and starring in Greece, might I add.
Good for him. Good for him. Really, really
sorry
good
for derailing you over there.
Well, see, that was in the 50s, though, right? That wasn't like a real second round pick. That was a nonsense pick.
He came over for the press conference, though. He was here.
Oh, yeah. He was ready.
Got about as
Just
much
not to play basketball.
Got about as much out of him as he did Pasechnik's.
Very true. Yeah.
How long was he in the league? He was at Washington for a little bit, right?
A year.
But it wasn't
a year?
More than a year, right?
I think a year.
I'll research it while you're...
But I think like someone big, rangy, athletic, and cover up some ground defensively, and hopefully knock down a shot off the catch.
2 years like for Pasechnik's in the league. That's now the second year was 1 game.
Well,
so
that doesn't count.
Good
He's
job.
Got 2 years in the basketball reference page, baby.
Good job.
That's
Trade
what
up.
Counts.
Trade up to 25, right? Yeah, I think it was
right
25.
around there, yeah. I forget exactly which pick.
That was despicable.
That was a Josh Hart.
That was Josh
ahead of Josh Hart. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
nailed it.
Yeah.
So you're hoping to do a little better than that. The one that first came right to mind, because we talked about him before, because he does have a lot of these tools. Because, like I said, I think when when Kelly Oubre came, it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air. Because like, holy shit, that's actually like a perimeter athlete in the NBA. You can do some things, have a little more flexibility defensively because of that. Robert Covington, for that week and a half he played, I think showed you how some rangy defense can help.
Yeah.
Naji Marshall, I think, is just somebody that I would target. Like, he's at the very, very top of my list on the remainder of that. There is a lot of question with the jump shot. And I think the more I go back and watch a jump shot, there is some right to left variance that indicates that maybe that percentage is a little bit inflated. What do you end up shooting? High 30s?
38.7% on 2.3 attempts
and
per game.
And before that, he was like 20s and 30s.
And I will say, 30s. So in fairness, we're looking at raw attempts. He did only play 19 minutes a game. So if you want to say, hey, there's room for him to get to, let's say 3 or 4 with just an uptick to 25 to 30 minutes, if you're relying on him like that, I could buy that, but he is not a high volume guy where we sit today.
Not a high volume guy. And like I said, when you go back and watch him, I think there's some right to left variance, but I think he has so many skills defensively. I think he can be a connective passer. I think he can play defense on the perimeter. I think he can switch. I think he can help and recover. There's so much about that if that shot is even at like a 35 or 36% level and you can get him to grow in his confidence on taking them quicker, I think there is a really good, helpful rotation player in there. Whether or not he ends up going back, I don't know. Whether or not he's truly gettable, I've seen some conflicting reports. But he is the first one that came to mind when we brought this topic up a half an hour ago in our pre-show prep.
Yeah, and I know when we discussed him in a previous show, something that I have heard from people who cover the Pelicans or people around the Pelicans is that he's improved as how he reads the floor and that he's an underrated passer. And so somebody that if he gets the ball on a swing opportunity out of a Joel Embiid post up and the closeouts there, that he can put it on the floor as a straight line driver, but also make decent decisions, right? And that's a distinction because even Robert Covington, who we watched him at the start of his career, that guy could not dribble twice in a row without it being a complete disaster. Now, he turned himself into a pretty decent closeout attacker. Like that was the big weakness in his game in the role that he was in. And I give Cov credit for fixing that at least a little bit over the years.
Though.
But
it took years.
It took most of his career to this point to get to where he is. But on top of that, he was still never a passer out of those situations, right? It's either he's getting to the rim or it's probably going to be a little bit of a train wreck, or best case scenario as a passer, he's hitting like the guy in the strong side corner who's wide open when somebody cheats over. Naji Marshall might be able to make some passes over the top, some nice drop-offs under the rim to somebody like Joel Embiid. And so you get, look, I'm not saying you rely on him as a secondary playmaker. You're talking about a guy who had like 2 assists a game, and that's kind of been where he's at. It's more the mechanical skill and the ability to read the floor off of a live dribble that excites me a little bit. Like, hey, can you experiment with that a little bit? I know one of the themes when Nick Nurse came in beginning of last season was, hey, look, I'm going to look at this roster that we have with a new set of eyes. I've never coached these players. I've never had them in my system. So Paul Reed, you want to shoot threes? I'm going to let you do it. Kelly Oubre, you want to spread your wings and attack, play your way? I'm going to let you do it. And then the longer the season went on, he reined guys in and it was, okay, this is how we're set up. And Paul Reed, please stop shooting so many jump shots and so on and so forth. So I think my view on Nurse and how he would handle a player like Marshall is, okay, you come in. Obviously, we need you to make threes, but what else can you do? What else can you show in that first 2, 3, 3.5 months of the season? And then by the time we get to the end of the race, we know what you are, who you are, what you're good at, who you need to play with, and then we'll specialize you. So I think that could work to the team and to Marshall's advantage. And I think that's how Nurse sees things at the beginning of the year.
And I think when Embiid was out for that time, we saw, I think it was real instructive of how I think Nurse would prefer to play with Embiid out. And that was a lot of movement, a lot of defensive activity, forcing turnovers, getting out. I think he would help that in a big way.
And just to add on to the skill set base that you guys are talking about, then he just brings some necessary toughness too that the team always needs when we get ready to have these conversations about what they're missing during the season, what they can provide in the offseason to fix this team. It's always the toughness parts that comes with it. You want those guys that can play a little physical, can while doing the other stuff and not allow it to really affect their game. Naji Marshall, you could see that from him in his time in college, and then certainly seeing it now with the New Orleans Pelicans, where he can provide that for the Philadelphia 76ers. So I like that one right from the start. Naji Marshall, what was your first one?
I mean, listen, I'm going to focus on the internal stuff. I think it should be a relatively big priority to try to get Batum back here. Now, do I think Nick Batum should be
Why the fuck Batum in?
It's a great question on occasion. I don't think he should be as important of a player as he was last year, where he basically needed to start and close games. And that is going to be the trick here is, where do you find the middle ground with the money? Where do you find the middle ground with the role? Because frankly, I don't think Batum wants to come back and play another season if he's just going to be like 9th guy in the rotation, right? Like he's already indicated in so many ways that not that he's ready to retire, but that it's at least on his mind. And so you have to make a compelling case to him like, hey, this is why we need you and want you back. He then has to take that to his wife, who has her own thoughts on, hey, Nico, it might be nice to just enjoy our money that we've made together, go relax in the French countryside somewhere, just start our new life as, non-NBA people anymore. But I do think he loves the game. I do think that him and Joel are tight, which that'll help. And I think we said it throughout the year, right? He brings so many things to the team and in Joel specific lineups that they've always needed. The entry passing, the quick release as a shooter, the defensive versatility, where I think he was having, I think he was having to defend maybe one guy up the rotation too much. Like they were needing him to check top assignments and often maybe second best guys. If he's on like your third best perimeter player, you are really cooking with gas defensively, especially because that means he can save his legs a little bit. He's not chasing around, Jalen Brunson and Trae Young and these smaller guards, where he's good at defending those types of guys because he gets into their chest, he uses his wingspan, all that stuff. But I'm more focused on with him, what is the offensive value he brings to the table? And also, frankly, like we don't need to go too deep into all the character locker room stuff, but that stuff does matter, especially for the glue guys, as we said at the top of the show. And he is as good as it gets in that department. Just a super pleasant, very experienced guy. All the guys in the locker room love him. So it would be a priority for me if I'm running the team to make sure he's back on the roster again next year.
Of course, we talked about him as one of the guys when we did our state go, and all of us agreed that Nick Batum was one that we would like to see back. So not much to add there. One is for me, that's a little tricky because of the RFA title that's next to his name. But we wanted to get a little freaky with the how we put this team together here, add some names out there, and what he's done for the Indiana Pacers in the role that he has right now, coming off the bench as 6'9", coming off the bench, rangy forward, still young enough that when I look at now Pascal Siakam probably staying there in that front court with Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and Aaron Nesmith, and how they put things together there. And we'll see what happens with Benedict Mathurin also as part of their group. But looking at Obi Toppin and having that range there, playing some important minutes on the playoff team where he's trusted, and in one of those big games that he had in the Garden. Of course, he's familiar with playing in Madison Square Garden, but knocking down three-pointers, driving and finishing at the rim. We know the athleticism is there. How would he be able to play next to someone like Joel Embiid? So a player like Obi Toppin just has the interesting where, the light bulb kind of just goes off for me of what could that guy look like in a more starting role on again another playoff team, but now having this run to the Eastern Conference Finals, as fluky as it is or not, the guy is the athlete that we talk about. Can he defend? Can he knock down enough 3-point shots?
And he shot well this year.
And he did.
That's like after a couple of years of low to mid 30s, he shot real well. He's always had pretty good indicators. Like his free throw percentage has always been solid and respectable. Whether or not you buy that shot's a big one. I think whether or not you think he can play in a more confined half court role, they get out in transition more than anyone in the league. That's a big one as well. And how much you buy the defense. Like in prior years, it always looked like his defense was leaving something on the table. Like he should have been more productive than he was. I think he's been much better of late and a real contributor during this run. But whether or not you buy that going forward, those are the three questions. But my concern is that with this run, is he being priced out of the Sixers?
Sure.
That would be my guess. Yeah. I think he might get into that role player range we're talking about with like a KCP, like 15 plus, right? And I think if you don't get into that range, the Pacers might just match it and say, look, when you match an RFA, you can't trade them for a year from the time you match it. That's the rule, I believe.
I have to double check.
So I believe that's the rule. So if they don't really want to give him whatever money, but you say, all right, let's say somebody gives Obi 3 for 33 offer, like just make up a number. You match that and you just say, even if we don't love him that much, that's an eminently tradable contract. Because look, the concerns for him coming out of college were mostly like he's an older prospect. And if you're trying to get maximum upside, I don't really love him, all that. But for a guy who's going to be a role player on a better team, who just needs to be one of your top 7 guys, I think you say, look, he's a live body as an athlete, somebody you can throw lobs to out of the dunker, use as a cutter. He's a better floor spacer this year. He hasn't been as good of a rebounder as he should. And that's something that would concern me as playing the front court minutes next to Joel Embiid. But I do think there are enough, the athletic tools are there. The finishing ability obviously is incredible in both the half court and in transition. And if you buy the shot, then look, he's got the makings of a guy who over the next few years can build on this season and become even better.
The trade the trade restriction there is 3 months or until December 15th, whichever is later.
On a match?
On a match. It's the exact same as signing another team's free agent.
I don't know what rule I'm thinking of that you have to, it's like a year from. I'll look into it later in the show.
Anyway, for him, like if the Pacers did match, they would be able to trade him by December 15th, so well in advance of the trade deadline, so that wouldn't be a huge concern. Yeah. Decent
enough name to at least discuss.
Obi Toppin. No, he was. If we were doing a show 2 weeks ago, he would have been towards the top of the list. I just worry that he's priced out.
Yeah. So you found it?
I'm just because it happened with Paul Reed. There's some form of like no trade clause that you have for the first year of the contract. I'm pretty sure.
There's all kinds of restrictions. I'd have to.
Anyway, that's real work. Deep in the weeds.
This is not going to be the best pod if we all sit here and scroll through the 300-page CBA at the same time.
Good agent work by Paul Reed's agent to have that in his deal, where we'll see. And plus, look, Indiana was also a team that, as we
there's a year after signing a designated veteran extension. But that's obviously not Paul Reed.
This is you put this in your primer for the offseason. We're already too many. We're talking about it too much.
There was also some information that Indiana could potentially go after some other names like Paul George, so that may push him out the door. But the pricing may be too much for the 76ers. That said, if we're not adding a price tag to him, just projecting out that there will be a decent number. If it did match and the Sixers went after him, that would be a name that would interest me for Daryl Morey in the front office. So, yeah, I like that one.
You know who else I like?
Who you like?
Our friends at Rite Aid.
Oh, is that? Hold on. I was looking.
I could see you looking at your computer.
I know
that you're looking through the CBA, so I knew I had to give you the cattle prod and just be like, hey, by the way.
All right, so we want to tell you about Rite Aid. I feel like with the way my sinuses have been going, this should be a sinus read or it should be a
I don't
allergy
think they'll
read.
mind.
But
I don't think they'll mind.
Seriously, like there's so much pollen in the air right now, it's killing me.
Exactly.
But we want to make sure we tell you about vaccines. Protect yourself and your family by staying up to date on your immunizations. Rite Aid pharmacists are specially trained, certified immunizers. And did you know that most vaccines are no cost with insurance or through government plans like Medicare Part D? Rite Aid pharmacists can vaccinate for COVID-19, shingles, which is a painful rash caused by the same virus that causes chickenpox, RSV, a highly contagious seasonal virus that infects the respiratory tract, pneumonia, tetanus, whooping cough, chickenpox, and more. Select Rite Aid stores have a dedicated pharmacist ready to administer vaccines and answer all of your questions. If you have questions on what immunizations you need, if you're not sure if you're up to date, or if you're feeling nervous to ask questions, a Rite Aid pharmacist will take the time to make personalized recommendations based on your health history and discuss any concerns. No questions are too small. Just walk in or schedule an appointment Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. State, age, and health restrictions may apply. Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist for details.
Well, gang, you know what time it is. It's Friday, ready for the holiday weekend.
Look at that.
I'm going to have myself a delicious beverage. This time around, a grape. Classic grape. Olipop. Guys, Olipop, as you know, looks like Devon's got one too. Hey, cheers,
great.
buddy. We'll do a little. Look at that.
Look at that right there.
All right. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. It is available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores. You can scoop a classic root beer or a strawberry vanilla at a Wawa near you. But as many of you are finding out and telling me in DMs, on Twitter, and the YouTube chat, all over the place, you can find Olipop all over now. I have people saying, hey, I'm at Target. They got a deal on Olipops. Look at all these different flavors they have. And they have flavors that we don't even have here in our studio, in our Olipop fridge or our bigger fridge out in the offices. The good thing is they have a little something for everybody between, look, the vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, cherry cola, watermelon lime, and much more. The Good Luck ginger ale that Devon leaned on during the playoffs. Maybe you didn't lean on it hard enough, Devon.
That's very true.
Maybe we needed some more ginger ale. And look, guys, on top of the great flavor and variety they have, there's no added sugar, only 2 to 5 grams of sugar from natural sources. For example, the vintage cola has just 2 grams of sugar compared to a regular Coca-Cola, which has 39 grams. Look, we got to work on our beach bods, right? Memorial Day weekend, summer's coming up. Got to save yourself some sugar, some calories. Olipop helps you do that without any compromising on what makes soda great. So use the code PHLY20 for 20% off of your next Olipop order. Discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, but also at Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff.
Well, Nona said get the Barbie Olipop. I don't know that one for my girls.
So while you were telling our listeners about the great company that is Olipop, I got everything sorted out. The 1 year thing is when you match a restricted free agent's offer, they have a no trade clause.
Yeah.
So they can, but it's not that they can't be traded. They just have to consent to it.
Okay.
They also then can't be traded to the team that made them the offer.
Yes.
So that's what it was.
Okay.
So Paul Reed would have had the right of first refusal. He would
have been able to say no.
Yeah. He had the
and
Bradley
then the Sixers
Beal.
could have cut him, and they would have had a non-guaranteed contract. So
hey, Eugene Ross saying he's got a beached whale. So, buddy, we're all working on it. It's only May. It's May 24th. You got time.
All right, Derek.
One day at a time.
What do you have for another one? We already went through a few here. We started off, of course, with Naji Marshall. Kyle went with Nico Batum. Obi Toppin, the last one. Who do you have next?
So I know he's not shot nearly as well of late. I am not completely out on Caleb Martin. Not completely out.
Neither am I. I like that one.
He was a much more interesting name a couple of years ago when he was shooting 40% from three. Now he's been in the mid-30s, but I still think there is an effective role player in there. He was sort of like the next name on my list.
Yeah, I like that one.
And he's not so old where like you're worried about him falling off athletically.
Yeah, I'm in on that one.
I don't know if there's that much to say because I feel like we've all watched him so much over the last couple of years.
It's like, hey, can you pray to whatever voodoo god allowed you to shoot 60% from three in
if
a
you can do that
conference
at the right
final
time
series?
in May, that would be great.
And
That'd
against Boston would be fantastic. That would be great. Yes, I like Caleb Martin as that name goes.
Yeah. Look, the only thing I would be worried about with him, Pat Riley has a great sense of like when somebody's going to go off a cliff or just they do a very good job of getting the most out of what they have.
Does that concern you about another guy that he's concerned about giving an extension to?
His is different too with the age.
Maybe.
Yeah. But that age.
No, I mean, like we're all scarred from Josh Richardson. We're all scarred. Like they got him to the absolute apex of what Josh Richardson can give you and then shipped him away. And we kind of paid the price for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Caleb Martin, if he can flash back there. Because you saw this in playing against the Sixers, he had problems. Tyrese Maxey would get him in foul trouble.
Yep.
He would get frustrated picking up these fouls. He had to sit on the bench. He could not knock down a shot. At one point, when you kind of flash back to that Boston series, you say you can't leave that guy open. And then you realize why you can leave that guy open. But as far as the ability and what he adds to the table, I would still take a look at it. As long as we talk about prices being right, I would look at them. Yep.
All right, I got one that was a potential Sixers draftee way back in the day. I'd say a secondary draftee when they had these years where they had multiple picks, and we're looking at
What year? You remember?
2014.
2014.
Ooh.
That was Joel's draft, right?
Yeah.
So a long time ago now.
Okay.
Guy who's played on 2 different teams. Gary Harris.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
he was on my list.
Saw
for
a
sure.
name in the chat. Yep.
Gary Harris. So here's the problem with Gary Harris. I think that he might make a decent amount of money, right? Like he's
He was
still
on like 12, 13, somewhere
he
in
was
that
at
range.
$13 million last season. My guess is he could probably get at least in the ballpark next year. I think, frankly, Orlando might want to make it a priority to keep him because he's one of the few guys that was a reliable shooter for them. Shot about 37% from 3, and that was actually down compared to the previous 2 seasons. He shot 43% from 3 in 2022-23, 38.4 before that. He generally hovers in about the 4 to 5 threes per game range. And I think what you love about Gary Harris is that you can play him in a wide variety of lineups. He's someone that I think makes a lot of sense as a partner for Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt. Do I want him as an every game starter? Probably not, because I don't think the creative tools are good enough. I don't like when he tries to put it on the floor and do anything other than be kind of a spot up guy.
Other than straight line drive, it gets hectic,
he has to keep it very simple. And I don't want tons of guys like that on the roster, frankly. I think one thing the playoffs have driven home once again is that you just need guys who can make quick decisions and, act on them, which sometimes means shoot, sometimes means take somebody off the bounce and get to the basket. And I don't think he's great in that respect. But good size, pretty good defender at the 2 spot, someone who could probably defend 2s and 3s, take on the tougher assignments that Tyrese Maxey either can't or won't on a given night. So I like him a decent amount.
How long have they been Sixer fans trying to acquire Gary Harris?
Since 2014.
Yeah.
Money Mar doesn't like any role players, by the way. Everyone, it's Buddy Bricks.
Are we
Junior.
sure? Are we sure Money Mar's not Daryl Morey in disguise?
Money Mar, I'm
gotta
not
be
bringing
careful.
Gary Harris here just to shoot. He can shoot a little bit and he can defend. That's the point.
Yes,
Buddy,
yeah.
he's either shooting or he's not doing anything. That's the difference. So I'd have some interest in him.
I would.
I wouldn't overpay for him. I wouldn't pay a ton.
I was surprised at the money he got the last contract.
Or remember
like-
with Denver, he got like $80 million.
Yeah.
I might be in the room exception type range for him.
See, but I think
he's getting more than that.
A lot of that depends on what Orlando does with their space, right? If they are able to prioritize something else, maybe he can wiggle free. But if not, then I think they would just.
The other part of it too, and the money will matter. The other part is, can you give him a bigger role here than so? Like, let's say Orlando goes out and they sign Malik Monk and they sign another. Maybe they do the role player thing. Maybe they sign Malik Monk and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They give both those guys, let's just say 2 for 50, somewhere in that range, 2 for 45, whatever. And those guys are going to be some of your big minute shooters and like 2-3 types on the team. Gary Harris might get squeezed in that situation. You might go from being a 24 minute a game guy to like 10 to 15. And the Sixers, if they are on the other end, if they say, hey, we got Paul George or we traded for Jimmy Butler, we have to fill out the roster with guys who will play real minutes and play a significant role. I think you could sell him on that. And that would be not more important, but that would be as important as the money part of it.
And that's a good point, because a lot of these guys, when you start, especially if you start talking about the conversation we had yesterday on if they strike out on their top targets, and you start offering 1-year deals, 1+1 deals, 2-year deals that maybe players otherwise wouldn't take, you can go, all right, look, we've got 3 people under contract right now.
Yeah.
You're going to get playing time. You're
Sure.
going to get opportunities because we have literally nobody else to give it to. So maybe they will take a shorter deal than they normally would and try to boost their stock, and you can be the beneficiary of that. Not that Gary Harris would necessarily do that or be that guy, because I think the league knows who and what Gary Harris is. But to your point, if he does not or if he's concerned about the playing time in Orlando, the Sixers don't have that problem.
If KCP did leave, I'd be curious to see if he decides to go back to Denver and try to
Gary Harris.
take that
about.
spot. Yeah. Try to take that spot back there in
I was
Denver.
going to say, if KCP leaves and goes back to Denver, he never left Denver.
Yeah. If KCP
he threw me for a
leaves
loop there
and
for
Gary
a second.
Harris goes back to Denver.
That was my fault.
I'd be very curious.
I mean, it was his fault.
that.
He misspoke, but we picked it up on
It's
it.
a Friday before the holiday. It's allowed. Yeah, we're allowed
Devon's choosing chill.
Yeah, I am. I'll go with another one. We brought his name up and we brought him up briefly. And of course, it'll be brief here because we rolling through these names. But I'll go back to the Dorian Finney-Smith conversation that we briefly had, where in decent enough age and the shooting that we talked about the other day, that will be someone leaving Brooklyn with so many wings that they might have, that the ability to, as the guys have already pointed out, there's some opportunity here. You can play here. You will play, and you might even start. You might have an opportunity to start, especially after landing a swingman or wing player that's going to be the high number, and that big all-star level, maybe third-star type of player. You being a role player coming in here and being that other guy that can start in the role of what Nick Batum did. You just hope that knocking down that shot, the defense will be there. Of course, you can still run the floor, put the ball on the floor a little bit as well, athletic enough. It's really about the shot. Can he knock down the shots? He will take them. Will they fall is the question. And like I like to always say and try to get the guys to agree with me on that one a little bit, is playing with Joel Embiid is something that, again, he has not done. So when you have that type of player in that space, and he's a good cutter, he will flash to the paint. He go cut baseline and find that spot in the dunker spot and just find that open area. And he's physical enough where he can also take that contact, finish at the rim, and maybe get an and one in that possibility. So Dorian Finney-Smith on a decent contract, decent enough age still. He still has enough in him where that would be a player that I would look to target.
Yeah. No, and he's somebody we talked about leading up to the trade deadline. It's just the asking price was apparently ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Agreed.
Yep.
That's and to build off what you're saying, Devon, I think he's someone whose value becomes more apparent on a good team and in the playoffs than in a situation where Brooklyn is just kind of stuck in no man's land and like that. Those are the guys, like we were talking about the Aaron Gordon types, right? Like, and we're thinking more of like, who's the third guy? But it's also true for role players. Like some role players are just better suited for or shine more when they have the supporting guys or like the top level guy
like his
bring
role
out their best.
With
like
Dallas.
playing with Dallas where he's playing off of Luka. Like I could see him playing off of Tyrese in bench units and being a switchable forward in those lineups where, we'll see what they do with backup center and Paul Reed specifically. I know we've already weighed in on that several times at this point. But I think you saw Dorian Finney-Smith in some playoff settings play, not for long stretches of time, but play like some small ball five or lineups where it's like him and Maxey Kleber and guys who are like, it's more interchangeable than it is like, hey, Derek Lively's back there or hey, Daniel Gafford's back there like they have now. And I thought he showed his worth a ton in those situations. And so the shot matters a lot. He still is not the reliable shooter you would want him to be. But I think in terms of the defensive value he can bring, even when the shot's not there, he's someone who's absolutely worth a look, depending on what it's going to take to actually get him on the team.
Yeah, and whatever cost that might be for Finney-Smith, Toppin, Marshall, all the names that we've thrown out there, if they were to ask us, hey, where should I place my money? Certainly somewhere safe. And that would be with our great friends from TrueMark Financial Credit Union. When you join a credit union like TrueMark Financial, you become part owner, which means profit comes back to you instead of going to the shareholders. Better rates, lower fees, a better return on savings, and more flexible options with all the same digital tools and tech to make our lives easier. And when those NBA players have to put that big salary somewhere, they want to feel comfortable. And TrueMark has those local roots. They'll be a part of the city, the fabric of this area for the few years that they have signed that deal. Local roots right here. You'll be a part of that with TrueMark Financial, headquartered in Fort Washington with 24 branches, one of which I always bring up in the Upper Darby area, in the Philly area as well. They serve our community and our people right here at home. Becoming a member of a credit union has so many benefits over being a customer at a bank. It's a total no-brainer. Head over to TrueMark.com/PHLY to learn more or to find a branch near you. That's TrueMark.com/PHLY federally insured by the NCUA?
Well, guys, it's a holiday weekend. The time has arrived for your cookouts.
Yes.
Your trips to the beach.
Yes.
Hanging out in the park. Hanging out in the backyard.
Beautiful weather.
But somebody might come there causing some trouble. Somebody might they had a bad day. They had a bad week. Not everyone enjoying the holiday weekend for what it is. When those annoyances come, whether it's a big deal or a small deal, there's a better way. There is a chiller way. Choose chill and then reach for an ice cold Coors Light. And with Coors Light, you're getting an ice cold beer when those mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans as they hit that perfect temperature. I said it earlier this week, but look, holiday weekends at the Jersey Shore, not always great, right? There's some downsides. You got to fight for real estate, whether that's on the boardwalk, it's on the beach, close to the water, far from the water, close to the trash can, far from the trash can. You're playing music. Are you not playing music? There are a lot of things that you might not agree with your beach neighbors. You don't know what your beach neighbors are going to be like until you get there. So if you are there and you're annoyed and you need to take a step back, you need to say, hey, look, these college kids enjoying their summer vacation. Me, cranky old man, doesn't want to listen to their shitty EDM music. I'm the one who just needs to chill out, take a step back and say, you know what? I'm going to choose chill. Forget what everyone else is doing. I'm choosing chill. And then I can enjoy a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged Coors Light with a smooth finish and bring that mountain cold refreshment with me to the beach. When you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Instacart on a holiday weekend. Great idea, by the way. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And by the way, just unrelated to choosing chill and Coors, Dorian Finney-Smith does have that player option for 15-3 this year. That's actually kind of an interesting number.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure. Do we think he could get 15 a year in free agency this summer?
I think it'd be just under that number, somewhere around 12.
Yeah, because the mid-level's at 12. So
yeah.
So it's an interesting decision for him
Sure.
in the sense of he's 32. Do you just bank the 15.3, or maybe you hope for, can I get, if you can't get 15, maybe you can get 3 for 30 and say, like, maybe that's where I view myself at this point. Or maybe he thinks, hey, you put me on a better team this year, I can just shoot, like, assuming he gets traded at some point. I would doubt he finishes the season in Brooklyn if I had to guess, for one reason or another. He says, I'll opt in. I might get traded, and I have a good shooting season. At age 33, I could still get, one last big deal before.
Well, to your point, if 330 is sort of like the baseline that he has set, if he gets 15 million this year, it means next summer he's just got to go with
1 year at 15 or
2 years at
yeah.
7.5 total. Like that
Right.
seems like a pretty easy decision there. I would think
Yeah.
the bar would have to be higher than 330 for him to opt out. It's he's on the border of, I think, what he should do. It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
So that one will hinge on how he and his agent look at it this summer.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember who he's represented by, so that
know.
will probably inform his decision, because some guys are, I'd say, more aggressive with their opting out and whatnot than others.
Yep. You want to throw in the wild card before we get to the mailbag questions and throw up maybe something?
Let me look through my list of who I still had on here.
Well, so actually, we have a super chat.
I mean,
believe at some point
think
from
Kelly Oubre is probably worth one here too. Just if you were going to start off local as well with Batum, Oubre is in the mix.
think he certainly, his name should at least be brought up. But Mr. Rudy Poo has been banging this drum, saying, "Got to build the team. Like, Joel won't be available come crunch time. Need a starting caliber center, number one priority." So I don't agree with that. But is there so Hartenstein will be the big backup? Well, I'd say starter level, like that guy. He's the big name on the market.
He brought up Claxton. Mr. Pooh specifically said he would be okay giving him $20 million a year, giving Claxton. To be clear,
fuck no.
I like Nick Claxton, by the way. I like
Claxton.
He's going to get paid.
That would be one of the most irresponsible uses of limited resources you could possibly do. If Joel Embiid is not healthy in the playoffs, you have no chance anyway. So why would you inhibit your chance of building a team around Joel Embiid just so what? You can be less annoying in March when he's injured? Like, no. There's $20 million to Nick Claxton. You can't. There is no Paul George. There is no Jimmy Butler. There's no way to do that. No,
you might be able to get Malik Monk, and that's a might.
Is Nick Claxton and Monk better? No. Like, what are we doing here? And there is no chance Daryl Morey is going to give that much money, that much resources to a player that probably can't play next to Joel Embiid anyway. It's really just injury insurance and a backup. And by the way, Nick Claxton's not going to be happy in that role anyway. He's proven enough to be a starter in this league.
Yep.
I don't think Daryl Morey is going to spend $8 million a year on a backup center. He sure as hell isn't going out and trying to get a starting caliber center just because Joel Embiid misses games. It's just not happening.
The reason I wanted to tie that in, I wanted to ask you guys, is there a specific big of this group that you're like, they should go after him?
Trade or free agent?
I mean, yeah, either. I'm just looking more for this one at free agents because I personally am not giving up trade or draft assets for a center on a team that has Joel Embiid. But if you have somebody that you'd want to trade for, I would listen to it at least.
As far as those big men, Drummond is always the one that we always fall back on because we saw it. Outside of the maniac tendencies, if we talk trade, I still like the Isaiah Stewart thing.
You might be the biggest beef stew fan. In all of basketball.
Look, he's not going to play for Detroit because Jalen Duren has that locked in. He has that locked down. And while he is the backup, the money that he makes might force them to move him out. They also have a new president or GM, whatever Trajan Langdon's title is now, that he might want to move on from certain players. And I do like Isaiah Stewart. I like the maniac tendencies as long as it doesn't cost you a game. You can do that stuff.
Well, unfortunately, maniac tendencies don't...
it might only be because of the environment as well in Detroit of how bad that is, where he comes into a much better situation, and that might not be a problem here. I don't know that, but as far as you asking the question, I do like Isaiah Stewart.
I mean, in all honesty, if they're going to keep a resource to use, like, I would rather spend a draft pick on a young player that has a chance to grow and would be on a $4 million a year salary than go out and overpay for a more established center. Like, I don't know if that's Filipowski, if that's Edey. I don't know exactly what that is. We'll get to that in future shows. But my answer to that, if you can't get a guy on a minimum, would almost be draft someone.
Yeah, well, I think I'm looking more at the minimum type guys, like the Drummonds he's the obvious one. Another interesting one, he's a wild card also for various reasons. Jackson Hayes as a player option. I wonder if he's going to pick that up.
So out on
not him. A good. Listen,
I'm so out.
We're talking about minimum salaries. None of us are going to be all in on it.
I'm just saying, but if you go down the list, it's like you're dealing with Plumlees and Kevin Love is on a player option, and Tristan Thompson, and
no parts of Tristan Thompson either.
Will that help get LeBron back to Philly?
Right. I don't know, man. But it's
that dude owes LeBron a lot. He owes LeBron a lot for that contract.
Actually, it's an interesting one because they basically haven't used him in Boston. Is Xavier Tillman? I wonder because
we talked about him at the trade deadline. Yeah,
but that's what I mean. Like, I thought my kind of perception at the time before he went to Boston was, oh, that's a guy that someone will get him and he'll be like a legit backup. Well, he's basically not been playing, so
yeah.
I wonder if you could steal him. I think he has his weaknesses, but he's a sturdy guy. So wouldn't mind him.
I wouldn't mind that either. Nah, same. That's a pretty good one.
Not a Jackson Hayes guy.
Not a fan. Didn't like him in college. Got to the pros. When we talk about, like you said, a wild card, you have no business being a wild card. Yeah. You need to stick in the league. Yeah. And the stuff that you do just Yeah, I'm not a Jackson. He's on my all hate list.
Martian Lynch said Isaiah Stewart better off with John Stewart.
I think John's allegiances might prevent him. By the way, he's making a little more than
on the team. Martian, come on.
Yeah, no, Jackson Hayes, I'm out.
That being said, he's welcome to come on the pod if he does sign with the Sixers.
Sure,
we'll have him on.
Sure.
Somebody said Rashawn. I believe Rashawn Holmes has a player option. I can't imagine he's turning down a $12 million player option.
Nah, he'll risk
not at this stage
getting traded.
If he gets bought out, that's an interesting. If they avoid the second apron, he's an interesting buyout guy later in the season. But yeah, no thanks.
Yeah,
or not no thanks. Not realistic is what I'd say.
Yeah,
he's making 12.8.
That's a
he's
big
making
player
more
option.
millions and he's playing minutes per game.
Good for him.
That was Sacramento, right?
Yeah, that gave him the contract.
Yeah. And then he got
I honestly forgot he was on the Wizards.
Yeah,
I knew he was still on the same deal. I just didn't know where he was at
Dallas, and then Dallas shipped him in the Gafford deal. Yeah, and that one. More super chats that we do have here mixed in. That light is bright. I can't see it. If Cleveland is rebuilding, bring back the
Niang
George
bus.
Niang minivan.
What is $8 million per for a guy who can't play in the playoffs? Look,
special guest on the
we like
PHLY
George.
Friend of
show.
the program,
That's
and
right.
I can say that earnestly.
George is great. He's great in the locker room. He's hysterical. He's great at just randomly showing up on podcasts. Would I enjoy it? Sure, but you've got to be able to play it in playoffs. Like we say all the time, they've got 3 people under contract. They need to sign at least 3 more that you trust. And if he's eating up that $8 million, that's getting in the way of one of the other moves.
Kind of did eat up the $8 million.
No comment. Love you, George.
Look,
We can have fun with George.
and I love the shot. I love it. And no fear. I love it.
And he had another moment in the
He
playoffs.
does have like some
this
nice
past
like
playoff
between
run.
game
Yeah.
too, the little push shot
That little,
off the bounce.
that runner. Man.
Defensively, just no thank you.
Finny, bring it up. Apparently, the lights are too bright for you on this show.
They are.
All right, Jared Allen.
They are.
Jared Givens over there.
that's bad.
The lights are too bright.
That's bad. And
Or what is it? The lights were brighter than expected, is what he said.
He
That's
did say
that like meme template.
Dylan DePulver. How do you say this one?
Dylan D.
Dylan D. There you go. Fellas, great show. You guys expect the Sixers to give Embiid the max extension he's eligible for, and he should get it. Would that result in less free agent moves?
Would not impact the free agency this year. Wouldn't, frankly, impact even the next couple of years because he's got, 2 years left and a player option for a third. So he's under contract for a while. That won't change. It's just adding more years on to the end of that. And yes, I expect them to give them that extension.
Yeah.
Daryl Morey he's going to keep his stars. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
You don't get an MVP and Daryl Morey trade him. That's just never going to happen.
That simple.
That's simple. You want to get into a couple of these mailbag questions? Throw a mailbag question?
Yeah, we can get into it.
Right.
Let's do one or two.
Or did you have another name you wanted to toss out there that we haven't mentioned?
There are probably some more names. I mean, look, we're going to talk about Alex Caruso 1,500 times. He's not a free agent. That's somebody that you have to convince an irrational Bulls team and front office.
Yeah, and we've talked about it
to give him up, and that's what we have done. We probably should do like a full show on Alex Caruso at some point, but now's not the time. I think I was focusing more on, can you buy low on actually another Orlando guy? What happened to Chuma Okeke?
I was so thankful that you said his name.
What happened to him?
He came back from the injury. Everything looked good with the knee. He was starting for a couple of those games, and then all of a sudden he just disappeared again. But I still have some interest there.
I mean, listen, you could get him for a minimum.
Yeah.
He's not going for more than the minimum.
Yeah.
But it's like he just fell off the face of the earth. It was like, oh my God, what a smart pick by the Magic because he was hurt coming out of Auburn. And it's like he's going to come back and you're going to get surplus value out of that pick because of the talent people thought he had. Good? And then he might know. I haven't seen him enough to know.
But it's interesting though.
But if you so that's more of the like end of the bench flyer.
Yeah, that's after we
that's after you get the real guys. You say whatever, we're giving you a minimum, and if you give them anything, fine. If not,
but I still think there's some defensive intrigue there. He's just got to be an NBA player offensively, and he hasn't been. The shot has not come around at all.
How about Malik Beasley.
Yeah.
Shooting, 13 points a game. Shot. What did he shoot from 3 this year? I think he shot.
Look, I could see him playing well 41% off of Joel for sure.
41% from 3.
Yeah, so he makes sense as an offensive weapon off the bench. I just kind of think my read on him is he holds himself in high esteem and higher esteem than probably his play warrants. Yeah. And I think he might be one of those guys, if you don't play him enough, it's like grumbling and like, what the fuck's going on? Like, I don't need I can live with the irrational confidence guys. I don't really like the irrational confidence shooters that also need to play 1,000 minutes to be happy.
He's also got some off-field stuff that I struggle to get behind.
I don't even know what
it's from a couple years ago, but
wasn't it like a vehicle thing?
I think I don't want to speak without looking at it. But
I understand.
I'd have to look into it.
Yeah, I understand that. And Randy, our buddy Randy Rubar says Beasley, Gary Harris, and all similar. Those type of guys.
Oh, Gary Trent Jr. is the other one you brought up. So, any interest in him? Because I feel like I've seen his name pop up.
Leaving
quite
Portland,
a bit.
Yes. Since he's been in Toronto, no. And I wonder what Nick Nurse thinks about him.
I also think he probably wants a good chunk of money. He's coming off
he strikes me as the similar type that you feel like he carries himself. He believes.
Beasley.
Yeah, exactly.
And like a souped up version too, right? Because, good shooter, helps you in that department. Not sure what else he really does for you. I think in Toronto, it could go either way, honestly. You could talk me into they didn't have enough guard play and shooting. So he was put in a position where he's trying to do too much, or teams are able to sell out on him in ways because he's just surrounded by a bunch of 6'8" wings who can't dribble or can't shoot and whatnot. I don't know. I don't think he's all that good.
Wasn't Mr. Pooh's bringing it up in the chat? Wasn't he one of the ones that Nick had called out publicly while in Toronto?
So now I don't know. I feel like I know more about the Siakam, let's say, disconnect with Nurse. I don't know a whole lot about
over it.
Right, because look, different guys can respond in their own ways to being called out. Just because he was called out does not mean he likes or dislikes Nurse the same level as Siakam. So look, I don't know anything about that relationship.
If every player who was passively aggressively called out to the media wouldn't play for a coach, Larry Brown would have just not been in the league.
Different time there, Derek. Different time. Certain guys can handle it. He also said, I'm guessing he's saying this player, he didn't say the name, he just gave the initials, KPG. I'm thinking he's saying Kevin Porter Jr., who played overseas per game, got whatever he got, like $20,000 per game or $30,000 per game. I'd say no. As far as, for me, I'd say no. On that player. No.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So
if I was out on Malik Beasley, I'm definitely out there.
Yeah.
And if I'm out on Miles Bridges, I'm certainly out on that guy. So.
Yep. All right. I guess that'll do it for all the names. I did write down Corey Kispert, picked up the option, $5 million restricted free agent next season. Get out of there. Just a shooter coming in off the bench because they still need shooting. I did write down Corey Kispert as a name.
We could sit here. It's like, what's that tweet that's like, men will sit around all day and just name random athletes? Like, we could do this for the entire holiday weekend. Be like, hey, what do you think about this guy? And talk about him for another 5
minutes. And by the way, since we are listing bad people that we don't like, we're going through them. Not this guy, not that guy, not Kevin Porter Jr., no Josh Giddey either. I know he was brought up on a show earlier in the week, but I'm a hard out on that one as well.
Fair enough.
And obviously the guy that gets brought up in the chat almost daily. Not going to talk about it here, but hard out on that. I have a pretty hard line on all this stuff that we're talking about.
Yes.
All right.
Ready to throw up one and
maybe like one or two
and get out of here
if we have weekend. Any. Super producer Bree. All right. From Code Ran. If and probably when Sixers trade number 16, do you see it more for a Melton trade 2.0 or part of a bigger transaction?
I think part of that depends on the rest of the league, right? Is there a team looking to move a big player at the draft? If the answer is yes, then it's probably a bigger transaction. If no, here's what I'll say. I wouldn't expect it to be a Melton type transaction just because that might get in the way of, unless you know what you're going to do in free agency and you have a pretty good commitment there, or at least an idea, you don't want to take on salary like you did with Melton. So you might end up trading it for like a later pick, maybe a second round pick, future picks. So you have more to trade, something like that. I would be surprised if they took on salary at the draft unless they had a really good gauge on what they were doing come June 30th.
But I think that answers the question. To me, I think what they do on draft night is an indicator of what they think they know about free agency, right? Like,
yeah, I agree.
A move is coming of some sort. I still feel pretty confident that they're not just going to sit at 16 and pick. And so I think it's less like, what do they have a specific move in mind? No. Will we know what they're going to do in free agency based on what they do? Yes. I think it's probably in the reverse order.
But if the question is, what do we expect? Can't say because none of us know what's going to happen. Like Daryl probably doesn't know what's going to happen yet. So it really depends on
Prophet knows.
Basically what we're saying is what happens with the pick is dependent on the big move. And we just don't.
Prophet said it's going to be Bronny. So there's that. You got to get on his list though.
Well, Spo Babby thinks it's taking a flyer on Zach Edey. So
Zach. All right, let's get to the next question.
I'd rather chat that than Zach LaVine. So at least we're moving up in the Zachs. Still not the Berman's level, but we're moving up.
Let's go to the next question.
TTP 3434.
Oh, 34.
Part of the equation with signing PG with cap space that even though you keep the picks, you now don't have many medium-sized contracts to package with the picks for better players in the future. I think the main logic behind signing PG is that you think he's good and good enough to be your number 3, and that you can preserve whatever flexibility you have left, which is to say through the draft. Like you can... I'm not expecting, if you look at Daryl's history, it suggests he's not going to make a ton of first round picks. Like he's been pretty good at drafting since he's been here. Doesn't make picks all the time. Prefers to get ready-made talent. And so it'll be harder to use those picks in short-term trades without the matching salaries. But over time, they still hold value. And look, we're talking about some of these picks. The Clippers stuff in 28 and 29, that stuff in theory could become very valuable in the next few years. Now, could go the other way as well. But yeah, that's some of signing Paul George is about keeping other avenues to add talent.
And here's what I'll say to that, though. The problem with that is that in the short term, yeah, you might have 4 or 5 first-round picks to trade. You have nothing to attach with them.
Mm-hmm.
You both have no cap space to take players back into. A little bit. You might have, like we've been talking about, that
you have to find a small
million.
contract or
But
smaller contract.
Outside of that, you have no players to aggregate in a trade. You have no assets in terms of like players that people actually want on your roster that you can include in that trade. So it becomes tough. Even if you have these picks, it becomes tough to really act on that at that point. But I think we're going to look at this and say, all right, we've got to build a 3 through 7 of the roster right now this summer. And that's true. That is the task that Daryl Morey has been assigned. That is probably unlikely. If we're being honest, maybe they get 3rd or 4th player, like they get a couple of players that help. This team is probably going to be imperfect because you can look, like even if you would say, well, rather than pursuing a star, let's go for depth. Well, most teams with like 2 stars and then good depth build that depth up over the course of multiple years. So it would still be worthwhile, not necessarily because you could use those picks to trade now, but because in February of next year or next summer, when you're coming off of whatever happens this year, you have a little bit of flexibility. That would be worthwhile because truthfully, this isn't a 1-year window. It is hopefully a 3-year window, health permitting, maybe even more if Embiid ages better than some people expect. And you're going to need those picks. But I would temper the expectation of you just don't have a lot of flexibility in a trade, even with those picks, because you have nothing else to trade with it.
The beauty of the pick and the draft, we'll debate. So hang on to that pick as long as you can, Daryl, so we can talk about it. And the same here in the chat, because as soon as you bring that up, guys, Mr. Rudy Poo says it better not be Devin Carter, all 6'2" of him. And the very next
how dare
in
you
the chat, Rupert Pupkin, Devin Carter, or Cody Williams would be great at 16. So see?
Hashtag embrace debate.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Cody Williams also younger brother of one Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So there you have that. All right.
Wouldn't be the first time they got the wrong brother.
You ready for a roll call?
I am ready for a roll
Let's
call.
get the
Thank
roll
you,
call.
everyone, for being here at the start of your holiday weekend. I hope you enjoy it. Hope, frankly, some of you are already down at the beach, hanging out, maybe having a nice cold Olipop or a Coors Light, watching the show, taking in some sunshine. Regardless, if you're in the office where you're at, thank you very much to all our people here today. Liam Stevens, Mr. Rudy Poo, the #1 backup center advocate in the PHLY Sixers universe.
Don't get too
Shout out to my guy, Eugene G. Ross.
What up, Gene?
Martian Lynch, trash talker extraordinaire. Cannoli.
Holy cannoli.
Rupert Pupkin, my girl Winona. Money Marr. Player Haters Ball, as always. Prophet One, Jonathan Chen. Guard Mello, Aaron.
What up, Aaron?
Provolone John. Randy Rubart.
What up, Randy?
Who else we got in here today, ladies and gentlemen?
You already said no.
Spo Babby.
Spo, we need a scouting report
Babby.
On Martin.
Citizen X.
Citizen X.
SB Cole. Keith B. Who else we got? The Italian Stallion. Rocky Balboa.
Rocky Balboa
in the house.
In the chat watching the show. Thank you, Rocky.
Did you see
Balboa.
they're restoring the Rocky statue? Doing some like cosmetic work on it.
See that.
This happened weeks ago. It might actually already be done, but apparently, anyway.
So many people coming in
immaterial.
Town bothering, you know.
Rob S. Breves 228.
What up, all those numbers?
228. It's 3 numbers. What are you talking about? Who else we got in here? I had some of the Finney Chase. I don't think I said that one in a while. It's good to see you, Finney.
What up, Finn?
Akil McKnight. Austin Krell gets some free promo. JJ Zon home.
Look at that.
All right, that's enough for today, everybody. If you have not already, I see a Rich P. What up to Rich P?
What up, Rich?
And what up to our guy Al, the 2-minute warning? I also see Vic. Shout out to you guys. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time that we go live. If you hit the thumbs up, you will have a better holiday weekend than if you didn't hit it at all. Promise you that. Choose chill, stay safe. Put down your keys. If you've had a few adult beverages, use Ubers, use Lyfts, use whatever you need to do. Hang out at the house. Don't do anything silly.
Yes.
And we will see you back here Tuesday at 2:30.
Thank you,
See
Bree.
you then, everybody. Thank you, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.